Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and I am here today to introduce you to my procrastination reads. So I have a bad habit of not getting to the books that I actually physically own on my shelves, and for July I've made a big commitment to myself that apart from a few buddy reads here and there, my goal is really to stick with books that I actually physically own. And one way I've been trying to make myself get to books is by putting holds on the audiobooks through Libby. And that prompts me to remember these books even exist. It prompts me to pick them up because if I have the audio and a physical copy, I know I'll have a much easier time getting all the way through it. I can listen on my commute, I can listen at work, depending on the book. I can read physically at home, and it just gives me a lot of options. The problem is I have a number of cards on Libby and they have that deliver later button, and I'm rather addicted to pushing it. And I wind up still not picking these books up. I'm not hitting deliver later because I don't want to read the books. If I didn't want to read them, I'd unhaul them. But usually it's that I don't have time. Maybe it's a long book and I'm not looking to make that much of a commitment at the moment. Maybe it doesn't work for the readathon I'm doing that month. There's a lot of different reasons I hit deliver later. Sometimes it's just muscle memory. That's just what I tend to do, is hit deliver later. So a couple years back, I started thinking of these as my procrastination reads, and I started making myself a priority to actually pick up a couple of these each month. It's been a goal in my 2023 and my 2024 blog posts at the beginning of the year, talking about what my goals are for the year, is to always hit these procrastination reads. But I have to admit to myself, I've been slipping on this. I've more so been putting in books that are backlist that I plan to read anyway in the month and saying that that fulfilled the requirement. It did, but not really in the spirit of the idea and the goal. It more so fit the letter of the law. So watching Becca from Becca in the Books do her Shelve It or Scrap It series, which I've really been enjoying, that kind of got me thinking about a way to rework what my original goal was for my procrastination reads and actually turn it into a vlog and potentially a vlog series, because that would mean I was actually setting aside time to fit these reads in. They would actually be on the TBR, even not knowing what they are for the month. I would set aside enough reading time to actually get to some of the books and accept some of the books as they come in on my Libby holds. So this whole thing is subject to change, but the idea would be that as I need a new book, I'll look at the top couple of holds that have come in on Libby, and trust me, there's some that come in every day. So it's not like I will have a lack of options. And I will select one of the first couple. Maybe out of the first three, I have to pick one. There are exceptions to the rule. Obviously, if it's a sequel and I'm not ready for that sequel, if it's book 3 in a series and I'm still on book 2, I can't read it. If that gets hit deliver later. If it's a book that I need for a specific purpose, like I need to read a particular book for a buddy read at a particular time and I'm not ready for it, those types of books can go along. And I may add some extra requirements at any given time. Like for July, my goal is to read physical books that I own. So any holds that come up that aren't books that I physically own, I'm just going to skip on those. That gives a general idea of what I'm thinking with this. It does also mean that I don't necessarily know exactly how many books I'm going to read in this particular vlog. If I wind up getting all really chunky books, I'm not going to get to as many as if I pick up a bunch of short thrillers. So it could be a little bit of everything. Obviously, not every book I own has an audiobook on Libby, so there may be times where I do a twist on this particular idea by going with books that are physically on my shelf that don't have audiobooks and therefore are also books that I tend to put off. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and pick a first book and see what we get. So I'm going to screen record my Libby and we'll see how this goes, because I know some holds did just come in. All right, so the first three that I've got here, I've got The Whispering Dark, I've got Nightbirds, and I've got the ruins. So those are my options of books I can pick. Those are the top 3, all of which newly came in since last I checked. So what do I want out of these? I think I want to go more so with either The Whispering Dark or Nightbirds. And honestly, Nightbirds is a book that I have from Once Upon a Book Club box, and that means I get to some gifts as I read it. So I think maybe that's what I want to prioritize. Part of the challenge of this reading challenge is finding the book after I've selected it. So decided to go with Nightbirds. Like I mentioned, this is by KJ Armstrong, and this is a book I received quite a while back in one of my Once Upon a Book Club boxes. And I will not be spoiling anything from those boxes. If you are subscribed, don't worry about that. But it will help motivate me to keep reading because there are opportunities in here for me to open some presents. So that's always a nice thing. This is a YA fantasy. I don't know a lot about it other than I do remember seeing the cover around quite a bit at one point in time. I do really like the cover for this one. It is set in a world where magic is illegal. But of course, magic can still be bought with a price. And the wealthy can go to see nightbirds, who are young women who have the ability to bestow magic with a kiss. So that's all I know about it. I will be back once I have some initial thoughts. And then the idea will be, once I finish this one, we'll see what holds happen to be in and go from there. So I decided to jump right into Nightbirds, and I am over 50%. I think I'm almost at 60% of this one. So far, I would say I am liking it. I'm not loving it. It's not necessarily a book that's completely drawing me to pick it back up. We're following a group of nightbirds, and they are very different women, but these women have the ability to bestow magic on someone with a kiss. And so they are basically hired out to do this to those who can afford it. And they've been kind of taught to fear magic in a lot of ways. There's a lot of politics tied to it as well. But as the book's going on, they're realizing that there's more to magic than what they believe. There's more power there than what they believed. So I do like that aspect of it. The setting is very much in line with like 20s speakeasy, even though I don't necessarily know if we're set in a particular time frame. But the author has confirmed, I did look at some of the notes, that this was kind of inspired by prohibition, except it's prohibition of magic, not of alcohol. So you've got speakeasies, you've got secrets being kept, you've got things happening off the radar of those in power, and of course those with money can get what they want, and those without the power and the money to do so are perhaps at a disadvantage. So I really like the creative way the author's kind of working within that concept, but making it magical. So that's really working for me. I'm looking forward to seeing how this wraps up. There is a sequel, so I do need to kind of decide if this is something that I would pick up a sequel for. Right now it's feeling like an okay, like a 3-star, but maybe the ending will blow me away. I guess we'll see. So hopefully I'll be back with some concluding thoughts on this one pretty soon, and I'll let you know. Okay, it is later the same evening, and I have indeed finished Nightbirds while I was out and about this evening, and I would say, yay, we're having success with reading procrastination reads, but not so much success in terms of enjoying procrastination reads. So, like I thought earlier on when I updated you, this does wind up being a solid 3 stars. There was nothing really wrong with it. It had things that I liked about it. I liked the idea of this magic system. I liked the idea of these women empowering themselves. And I liked the way the concept of birds and the concept of these night birds kept getting brought back into the story. So there were a lot of elements that I did like with it, but it just didn't draw me in. I didn't find myself particularly attached to any of the characters. I didn't find myself really wanting to stay engaged with the story. So it was on the lower end of a 3-star for me. But I do now get to pick out a new book. So I've been out this evening. I haven't been watching what's come through in terms of my holds. So let's see what we've got. So setting up the screen recording again. Libby. Okay. We've got The Changeling, Some Desperate Glory, and Bonesmith are the top books here. The Changeling is by Victor Laval, and this is a horror. It's a book that I've had on my shelf for a while. Some Desperate Glory is by Emily Tesh. This one I believe to be sci-fi, and I think it came in an Lumagray box. I know I have a special edition of it. And then Bonesmith I know also came in a box. That one is by Nikki Preto. Sorry, I'm trying to read from the itty bitty little icon on here. So, with these being the options, now I'm going to go right off the top and go with The Changeling by Victor Laval. I think having a horror would be a nice change of pace, and I have really enjoyed this author before. I read his more recent book, so that is what I'm gonna do. This one I actually knew exactly where it was because it has been calling to me from the shelf a few times. I've almost picked it up for a few things, but it is a slightly longer book. It's not huge, but the print's not super big, and I want to say it's like 14 hours on audio. I know I just saw it 2 seconds ago. I should remember that. But it has been intriguing me. I received a gifted copy of this from One World Publishing, and they sent this to me at the same time they sent me Lone Women, which I really wound up enjoying, by the same author. So I have been wanting to get to this. This one is following Apollo, whose father disappeared and left him a box of books and strange recurring nightmares. And now Apollo is becoming a father himself, and apparently the nightmares are back. So I really enjoy kind of dream nightmare type settings. So that gives me high hopes, and I really like that cover. So that's the plan. This will be my next procrastination read, and hopefully we have a little bit more of a success with this one. I am here because I am halfway through The Changeling by Victor Laval, and I'm generally liking this one. It is definitely on the slower side, and there is a kind of an underlying sense of menace to it that I am enjoying. We've been getting really a lot of setup and a lot of build up to start getting to some more action and more really creepy, scary type of moments. We're following Apollo, who is a young man and a young father. When he was a child, his father abandoned the family and left him and his mother alone. This left him with a lot of ongoing nightmares, and one day a box of his father's things appears on the doorstep, and in that is a book, and Apollo becomes a book person, which is very relatable. And he starts collecting and reselling used books and really traveling from place to place to do that, and living a pretty solo life as he grows up. And then he meets Emma, who's a librarian who he falls in love with. They settle down, they have a son. And Emma struggles after the birth of their son, and it seems to be possibly postpartum depression, but something goes really, really wrong. Something tragic happens. Do check trigger warnings, please, if anything about motherhood or children might cause some concerns. Emma winds up missing, and Apollo winds up reeling from everything that has happened. I'm trying to be vague because a lot of this stuff doesn't really come up until the halfway or close to the halfway point. The character of Apollo is one that I really feel for. I think some of the things that we find out about him along the way are a little surprising. There's some time jumps where all of a sudden there's something going on that I wouldn't have anticipated. And I'm not 100% sure how I feel about a few of those kind of time jumps where we don't really see what happened. We're finding out about things after the fact. but some of the moments, the tension is really great. The kind of position that Apollo's in, where he has no control over what's going on with his family, really builds up a lot of darkness that I like. So I am very intrigued to see what direction this is going to wind up taking, because at this point I'm not really sure. The title and the inclusion of children kind of give me some ideas or suspicions of what we're facing, but I'm really not sure. So I look forward to finishing this one up and coming back with final thoughts. And I'm back with final thoughts on The Changeling. Overall, I really did enjoy this. I switched to physically reading this one for the second half of the book, and I think that actually worked a lot better for me in this one. It does feel a little slow. It feels to me a little bit like it was longer than it needed to be, but I think the writing's outstanding. It definitely kept me intrigued to figure out what the answers were. In some ways, it felt a little bit like a mystery, just in the way that Apollo kind of has to go and try to find answers, try to find out what happened to his wife, where she's gone, all of these types of things. And it absolutely gets into horror. It definitely has some very disturbing moments. There's a couple of moments that I went, what? What did I just read? And it has a lot of elements that almost leave some open-ended questions to things. I don't think it's that the author didn't wrap it up. I think the author kind of intended for some things to be a little bit of a gray area, a little bit fuzzy in the head, but I both liked that about it and at times wanted some more answers. So it was a little bit of a mix for me. I would say I enjoyed Lone Women more than this one, but I'm still really glad that I picked this one up as well. And this is a solid 4-star read for me. And with that finished, it is indeed time to pick a new book. Toward my screen. Okay, I've got To Kill a Shadow by Catherine Quinn, which I think is kind of fantasy, possibly fantasy romance with a mystery element, if I'm remembering correctly. I've got Green Lights, which is Matthew McConaughey's memoir. And I've got The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I think I'm going to rule out Green Lights right off the bat, because that's the type of book, since he narrates it, it's one I'm definitely going to just want to do as an audiobook, I think. And even though I own the physical copy and will probably follow along a little bit in it, I think right now I'm kind of in the mood to have a physical book in front of me. So I think what I'm going to do actually is pick up The Pallbearers Club. This is the epitome of a procrastination read. I bought it from an indie bookstore when it was brand new. I saw it on their shelf and I had to have it. And then I haven't picked it back up again. I've heard really mixed things about it, which is part of the reason. And let me go ahead and grab it. Okay, that took me far too long, given that it was staring me right in the face and exactly where I first thought it was, and somehow missed it. But anyway, I've got Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. And the reason I've been wanting to pick this up when I have time to read it physically is the format of the book is done in such a way as there's text and there's also these notes in red on it. And that's the reason that I picked this one up in hardcover when it first came out. And it's had me intrigued, but it's one of these books that I don't want to read when I'm going to need to leave the house. So I keep pushing it back. It is one that has me very interested. We're following Art, who back in high school was definitely far from being one of the cool kids. He had to wear a brace. He started a pallbearers club, which is just kind of weird, but also kind of interesting, where they basically volunteered to go to funerals that didn't have enough people attending. And then he meets a new friend who is, in fact, a very cool kid type of girl, and she thinks his club is interesting, but there's some weird stuff going on with her, and he's still years later trying to figure that out. And now it's been decades and he's writing the Pallbearers Club memoir, and she's the one who's making notes and edits and critiques on what he's written because she doesn't agree that a lot of it's true. That's my general impression. I don't know a ton more about this other than, like I said, I've heard some mixed reviews on it, but I'm really intrigued to figure out what's going on with this one. So I'm glad to have the push to pick it up. I know the lighting's a little bit rough at the moment, but I am going to do a quick update on The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I am about 45% of the way through. I've been listening to this mainly on audio, the physical copy in front of me as well to follow along. I think the audio does a really good job of incorporating the different notes from the friend, frenemy, whatever they may be, that's leaving notes on this particular manuscript. So we're following Art, who is the author of the book within the book, and his friend Mercy is the one who's leaving notes. We don't entirely know why she has this manuscript. From the text early on, we learn that he's put in some notes at different dates. He originally wrote it at one point, and then some years later he put in some text notes, and then some more years later there's some more notes, and then at some point he left this in a place where she got a hold of it. Whether he wanted her to have it or not, she seems to think that yes, probably he did want her to have it, but we don't really know. It's kind of a one-way communication. He's writing this text and she's responding to it. He set up this Pallbearers Club in high school as a way to get some extra credit for when it comes to applying for schools and the like. And Mercy is kind of the only one who really sticks with it and comes with him to these funerals. He has some suspicions about her and about the way he feels around her and about some of the things he says she has said in the past that has him thinking about vampires. She's protesting. She's saying he's crazy. He's making things up. Who do we believe? Do we believe him? Do we believe her? Is she protesting too much? It's just a really interesting way to tell the story. This doesn't have really high ratings in general overall on Goodreads. I think it's got a 3.01, something like that, or a 3.1. And I can see why. It's definitely slow. It's not necessarily super plot heavy, but for me, I'm really enjoying the fact that it's so creative in how it's telling the story and getting Mercy's commentary on what he's writing and who's telling the truth, who's revising history the most. All of those things I find really interesting in the way Paul Tremblay's choosing to tell the story. I don't predict this being a 5-star read, but I am having a good time with it. So I look forward to going ahead and finishing it up, hopefully pretty soon. I'm putting a little bit of a pause on things while I work on my summer Ween TBR, since that vlog will be up before this one. But in the meantime, this one's calling to me, so I will be kind of picking this one back up probably in between some of those books. So I'll let you know once I've finished and give my final thoughts. All right, I have finished with the Pallbearers Club, and I can see why the rating is so low. I honestly feel like it maybe went on too long. I was really enjoying the kind of gimmick of this memoir being written and this woman coming in and marking it up and saying things about it and trying to disprove things or dispute things. But I think I was enjoying the gimmick of it more than the actual story of it. The story itself is slow. It doesn't really ever pick up the pace too much, and that I think had it fall a little bit flat for me. I still had a pretty good time with this. I did switch mostly to audio though, because it just was a little too slow to keep me engaged with the physical reading. And of course, I'm not giving any spoilers, but I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about the ending. I think I liked the way it ended, but I'm still not even sure. It did leave me kind of wanting a few extra answers than what we got, and I liked it, maybe? I don't know. It's such a hard book to narrow down. I think this is gonna wind up being like a 3 or 3.5 for me. I really appreciate authors who play with the art of storytelling and use a different medium or a different method of telling a story. So from that standpoint, it does get a little bit of a score boost, I guess, from me. But this one's done. Not a new favorite, but I am glad that I finally got to it since it's been on my shelf, and I've been very curious about it. But I do need to pick my next book. I do know some things came through on Libby, so let's see what they are. The screen recording. All right. So I've got Cosmology of Monsters, which is by Sean Hamill, which I think is horror. Some Desperate Glory, and that's by Emily Tesh, which is sci-fi. And then Threads That Bind, which is by, yeah, that's hard to read, Becca. That's probably really, really wrong, either trying to read the microprint on that image and just the pronunciation in general. Some Desperate Glory has come up a couple times now. It was a buddy read that I didn't get to not that long ago, and I think that's the one that's calling to me. I haven't done sci-fi in a little bit. Okay, that's what we're going with, so give me a second. Alright, I found my copy. Took some digging on my shelves, but I got there. This is an Illumicrate edition that I have. Really like these sprayed edges. And foiling there. And I know nothing about this one. So the blurb starts with what the foiling says on the cover. While we live, the enemy shall fear us. We are what's left. We are what must survive. And we're following Kier, I'm guessing is how that's pronounced. And she has been training for a day where she can avenge the destruction of planet Earth. I heard from the group that was buddy reading this that it took a while to really get into it. And quite a few people, I think, DNF'd it early on. But it sounds like one that I need to give time to find out if I'm getting into it or not. So this one is going to go up next for my procrastination reads. And then depending on how long it takes me to get through this one, I might do one more. I have no idea. It depends on how my reading keeps going. I'm happy with getting through 4. If I can get to 5, that's a bonus. So I'll let you know when I get started on this one. I have now read the first half of Some Desperate Glory, and I'm having a pretty good time with this one. It is very reflective, so sorry if I'm blinding you with glare. We're following Kier, and she lives on a station that pretty much has the remnants of humanity on it. Humans have been overtaken by an alien race, and there's not very many of them left. They have limited resources and live a very regimented life. And Kier has been raised as a warrior. She's a very powerful, very good warrior, and that's really what she wants to be doing. What she finds out is that instead she's being assigned to be a mother, basically. And in this world, given the limited resources and the limited people, they need more babies to keep the race of humans going, but at the same time, no one can really take time out to have and raise children, so they've made it a duty. And for a number of years, she'll be assigned to have babies and raise children as her work. And this is not something she wants to do. She also learns that her brother has been sent on a mission that essentially means definite death, and is also something that she really doesn't obviously want to have happen. So she begins to rebel against everything she's been raised to believe. And she enlists the help of one of her brother's friends and an alien. So it's been an interesting time so far. With this book, I'd say my interest kind of comes and goes a little bit. At times I'm easily distracted and I have to rewind a bit because I've been listening to the audio to get back into it. But there's a lot going on in here that I am interested in. The main character's a bit difficult to get on with, but I think over time I'm getting to like her more. And I'm definitely interested to learn more about the whole alien species and everything that's going on with that. So I'm going to keep reading this one and we'll be back with some more thoughts. I have finished up Some Desperate Glory, and again, I will do my best to try not to blind you with glare on this cover, but it's difficult. There's not a lot more I can say in terms of the plot of this book. It takes a really hard left turn midway through the book, and a couple more big turns after that that make it really hard to talk about it. And obviously, I don't want to say anything that spoils anything, but I do like the direction that it took in the second half. I like some of the thought experiment almost ideas behind the storyline and the way that it impacted the characters. So the second half of the book I think worked better for me than the first half of the book. Still though, I think this one was just a little bit too disjointed in terms of my enjoyment going up and down and the way the storyline jumped back and forth a little bit for me to give it too high of a rating. So I think this one winds up being a low 3.5 star, probably one that I will give a 3 star on Goodreads. I'm glad to have finally read it and to be able to show off my pretty edition on my shelves still. Since this one did wind up being a little bit of a slower read for me, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this vlog here, largely because I was hoping to get it put up in the next few days. I'm really glad that I wound up doing this. It got 4 books that I've really been wanting to get to onto my actual TBR and off of my shelves, and that makes me very happy. I would absolutely look forward to doing another round of this. I think it worked well, giving myself a few options, but still holding myself accountable to reading what was available through my Libby app and making sure that I didn't actually cheat on that, which I was good this time. I promise. So with that, I will wrap this up here. So I will thank you very much for being here. I hope you had a good time following along with me. If you could hit that like button below, I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe if you're interested in more of my content. Let me know in the comments below. Are you good about getting to the books on your shelves? Do you have any systems that you use to make sure that you're reading what's on your shelves? Have you read any of the books that I read this week? Would you have picked differently when I had options? Leave me all your thoughts below. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, leave me an alien emoji for Some Desperate Glory. And with that, I will leave you here and catch you in the next video.